We had
Awesome.
one from Physiu, which donated $6.61. The protagonist must be Bubsby. Someone must be Bubsby.
No, not Bubsy. No, no. I mean,
And a $5 donation from Greffery. It says, character name, the RPG Chick. Good luck to everyone, and let's get this event started. Unfortunately, Fuzzy got the higher amount than Greffery, so we shall be naming the character a Busby.
Oh, Busby. How do you spell?
Busby. Or Bubsy, sorry.
yeah, it's a Bubsy
It's
the
a bad
Bobcat.
video game, yeah.
Oh,
Oh
okay.
no.
I remember that.
I don't have any good Legend of Mana puns, unfortunately.
Aw. Okay, so
Does
I
that
am
look
going to go
right, you
ahead.
guys?
Yeah,
That
that
looks
should be
good,
the
yep.
spell.
So I'm going to go ahead and swap things over to you. Give me about 5 seconds, and you can say what you want and count me down. Good luck.
Cool. Well, I'll just say one brief thing. I'm Ellervated, and my
So I'm going to go ahead
awesome
and
commentary team is
swap things
Mancat
over to
and
you.
Jake
Give me
Questionmark.
about 5 seconds, and you can
We're
say
going to be
what you
playing
want
Legend of Mana,
and count me
Dragon
down.
Percent.
Good luck.
Cool. Well, I'll just
Uh,
say one brief thing.
So, Jay, you want to
Ellervated,
count down, or?
awesome commentary team is Mancat and Jake Questionmark.
I'll let Ellervated come.
We're going to be playing Legend of Mana, Dragon Percent.
So, Jay, you want to count down, or?
I'll let Ellervated count down because I'm not sure
Yeah.
exactly when he's gonna press the button.
Okay,
That's fair,
yes,
that's
here we
fair.
go. In 3, 2, 1, go.
So we start time with activating which portion of the map you're using. In this game, you get to build your world map, which is pretty cool. And as a nice little bonus compared to a lot of RPGs, you're not having to count selecting your character and your weapon against your time because it starts out when you start actually playing the game, which is the map activation.
And we're gonna be like the first minute and a half or so is just uncontrollable, just intro stuff. We skip the opening cutscene. We got this section right here that kind of just explains a brief storyline, a brief like lead up to where you're at now in the storyline. There are 3 storylines for Legend of Mana. You have your Dragon storyline, your Fairy storyline, and your Jumi storyline. And they all have their varying time limits. And the requirements for them, they meet all the requirements to beat the game. And Jay should have more information on that.
So to activate the final quests that let you finish up the game, you need 18 artifacts placed, which are 18 lands or locations. Like I mentioned, you build the world map as you go. So as you complete each event, you get artifacts that let you fill out that world map and get access to more events and keep going and going. I'm not 100% sure if there's a minimum quest requirement. I know when you're done with Dragon Percent, you'll have done 13 and a half events. Insert obligatory half a press joke. But you do total, all told, including the final 2 events, 13 and a half. So I don't think there's a specific requirement on that. It is worth noting there are 68 events in the game, so we see a tiny little fraction of what's available in this game in the course of a Dragon Percent run.
To run it back a little bit, just to interject, in the home, he set up his abilities and a super tech. And the super tech we'll get into when he starts getting into battles, because it provides a key thing for the battle system itself, even though using it is not the reason. The abilities, I think you start off with 8 or 10 of them, and then you equip certain abilities, and there's a long list of the abilities you can learn, like jump, spin, dodge, or defend, lunge, etc., that allow you to do different special things during the battle, and the way you get them is every time you have one equipped, like he equipped defend, and he'll get a point every battle, and somewhere along one of the quest lines, he'll right before boss he'll pick up counterattack, which he'll then equip to learn Counter-Strike, and Counter-Strike is quintessential for a lot of as a quintessential time save for a lot of the battles and a few bosses.
Yeah, similar to the 68 events, and we only do 13 of them. There is a huge wealth of stuff in the battle system between different weapons you can use, special techniques, and abilities that sadly you never see in a run, which is why all of the people watching this should probably go out and pick up a copy of this game, because there is an insane wealth of stuff that is really fun in this game that even just in a speed run isn't necessary, because there are so many things that are in fact much faster but are really fun to experiment with casually.
Yeah, and so going into the Lost Princess, we'll get into our first battles. The whole point is we went to Domino, which is the first artifact we played down. It's basically the main hub town we go to. We visit this one and then we visit another town twice, and that's usually about it. So in this battle, you're gonna hear a beeping sound. That is not your stream, that is not your computer, that is power canceling, which involves doing a power attack, which your face buttons are your square, your triangle and circle are your abilities, defend, lunge, as we explained earlier, and then X is light attacks and squares your power attacks. Now, power attacks have horrendous ending animation lag, like they have recovery frames that are just terrible, but
it goes on for days.
Yeah, and so the thing is, you can cancel those into super techs, but we only have one super tech equipped. The game, if you use a equipped super tech button, which are your shoulder buttons, the R1 and 2 and L1 and 2, and you do that, you'll hear a beep sound, but your recovery animation is done. So you're able to move freely again. So what the main focus of the combo or the battles in the speedrun aspect is power canceling a lot of things down to win the battle. Because you're able to just chain them in, you can stun lock them with your power attacks, and that's the main bread and butter of the speedrun battle system.
So you'll also probably notice during these fights there's these little gems and coins dropping. Those are experience and money respectively. There's not really a whole lot of use for money in the Dragon percent run, and you'll notice he's ignoring a lot of the experience, and that's because this is a speed run. We want to go real fast. So leaving it and just grabbing stuff at the very end is by far the best way to go about these fights. By the end of the game, you get more than enough experience to take things out quickly, so there's no reason to pause mid-fight and pick stuff up when there's still enemies to kill.
During this fight, when the bosses are a big thing of RNG in this game, I've seen, outside of like two key components in the Dragon percent run, which we'll get to in a bit, one's coming up really shortly, they can cause a lot of RNG because there's some bosses that can just chain super techs, which bosses are completely invulnerable while they're doing the super tech. So you lose on the damage that way. The upside is that they're big, grandiose moves, and you can do your super tech and you're invulnerable while you're doing your super tech. So the main point of the super techs for you is when the boss does it, you activate at the right time so that you can hit your opponent, or you hit the boss with the super tech, getting you to kind of just circumvent the damage you wouldn't have gotten by just power canceling if they didn't get it.
That and you and the boss both get invulnerability wind up to the super tech, so you get to just sit there and tank the boss's powerful attacks and then unleash yours right as their invulnerability winds down, which is really handy.
Coming up right now is he's going to be re-entering Mech of Caverns to pick up the first of two weapon changes we do in the run. And the first one is he has to go fight 2 goblins, and they drop either a black elk or an earth splitter. Luckily, this boink that he just talked to, which are like 6-legged tie-dye cows, teleport you to right outside the door where you need to actually fight the goblins. And I don't know the percentage drop on the black elk or the earth splitter, but the black elk's faster because it's a one-handed axe versus a two-handed axe, so it has a higher DPS value just because you're able to just do more power attacks. They're quicker, they're faster. And getting it on the first try is really lucky, but generally it's 2 to 3 tries. And this is one of the big, some people can view it as a problem with this speedrun is heavy RNG, but once you get past that, the speedrun's really fun.
Yeah, so it's worth noting too, while the Black Elk is faster and your movement, especially while using it in battle, is very quick, the Earth Splitter gives you a strength bonus as you level up. So if we wind up getting an Earth Splitter off of this later in the game, the damage output will be a little higher, and there are some enemies that it may be possible to one-hit kill with, say, counter strikes, rather than almost killing them and having to take away that tiny bit of damage.
A third time, that's still really good luck.
Yeah, that's not bad at all.
I was wrong in the beginning. He just equipped Defend, which will now give him, he'll start learning towards counterattack.
Different weapons learn different special techniques off of having different abilities equipped. So, especially since with this, the menu coincides, and there's that tiny bit of load time as you open the menu. It's really efficient to switch things out as you switch out your weapon. But for counterattack and counterstrike especially, the damage output they do is worth immediately equipping them.
I think it's, what, Counter-Strike is a 1.5 or is it 2.0 damage increase when you...
I'm pretty sure it's at least 2.0. It's pretty huge.
Yeah. So the cool thing with counterattack and Counter-Strike is you can't counterattack or counter-strike super attacks, but any normal attack you basically can. And the upside is it kind of makes you invulnerable. It's like a small mini super attack for yourself.
Yeah, during certain bosses, I think you mentioned this earlier, it'll be a really key strategy to fighting them.
Yeah. He's going to pick up everyone's favorite rabbit, Niccolo, he's greedy. That's the only character trait I can think of. But we use him... Well, go ahead.
Oh, no, go for it.
I was going to say, so we're picking him up so we can get another quest out of the way and we can get another artifact on the ground to meet that requirement that was mentioned earlier.
Yeah, these first 2 quests, Lost Princess and Niccolo's Business Unusual, pretty much every run starts with them. You can continue on with the whole game without doing Lost Princess, but because both of these quests give you 2 artifacts each and unlock so many other things to be able to do, it would be kind of crazy, especially in a speedrun, to not do both of them immediately. Also, for people that haven't seen this game before, that is a teapot person named Tipo, because that's just what kind of world this is.
Legend, actually I'll go into this. He's going to now do Monster Corral, which we get access to getting pets, which leads us to getting a specific demi-human, which we can explain later when we get to that point. So he's going to do Monster Corral, and he's going to be skipping the tutorial, which just kind of asks you some questions. You pick option 3, and you bypass it all. And his method of catching the egg. Now, catching the eggs can be really annoying. When I've ran the game, I've had just terrible luck with them before. But his method is running at it, scaring it to the left, and then dropping a food down to entice the egg, and then he runs around and like loops around and scares it on the other side. So it runs towards the... It worked. But that's the when I watched him do the practice runs, that worked every time it worked. So that's kind of another thing with that's the aspect of like RNG. But you want to catch the egg when they're eating food, because if you try to catch them too early, you end up getting a massive time loss because you can't move. The egg freaks out and you get pushed in one direction, and the egg runs in the opposite direction. So not only do you have to sit there and then corral it back towards the food you placed down, but you just lost time because it's like a 3-second delay or something.
Yeah, so we've now unlocked the monster corral, where demi-humans and pets can be kept, and this is one of those many systems in the game that you don't ever... it's kind of nice, because from a casual perspective, you're not required to interact with any of these, but there is an orchard, the monster raising, forging weapons, forging instruments, which is the magic system that we'll never even see, and golem creation. So there's a lot of really crazy systems in here.
So moving into Lumina, we go here for 2 reasons. One of which is to do the quest, because it gives us the underworld, which is the main hub for the Dragon storyline, which is the namesake of the run. And we also go here for the demi-human. The whole purpose of this quest is you have Gilbert, he's a spoony bar. And he is in love with the siren, Monique, and she runs a lamp making business, and she can't make ends meet. So he's like, "Oh, I'll sell all your lamps." You go talk to him. He won't let you just straight up buy the lamps. You have to sell them. So then we go sell them to these dud bears, which you saw one earlier. You'll see one again when he runs by it. They're like cute, adorable patchwork bears that speak of their own language, which I think Jay had some comments about that earlier, about the dud bear language.
Yeah, so in this, all the dud bears say the same thing every time. We have to go learn their language, because otherwise we're not really able to talk to them, because the game doesn't consider us as knowing how to talk to them. But because there's no randomness to how they speak, we don't have to memorize any of that, learn the actual language. It's just a consistent set of options that are selected when talking to them. Though it is worth noting, I have a couple comments about dud bears that I have jotted down. Dudda dub boo boo, Dudda gak Gilbert, and Dudda do baba ba dub baba. So I'm not going to go into what all that means. Feel free to play through and sort it out yourself. But
what was the Gilbert? The Gilbert one was what?
Gak Gilbert. I don't like Gilbert.
Yeah, that's what I figured it was.
But the last one is that I really like the music, and like, I know we come here for the Dud Bear quest, and this is a really good event to hit in the runs, but I come here for the music. And it's worth noting at this point, the music, if it sounds at all familiar to folks, is by Yoko Shimomura, who's really well known for such things as Street Fighter 2, Super Mario RPG, Kingdom Hearts 1, 2, and 3, and they did some of the music in Final Fantasy 15, as well as a whole giant list of other games.
Yeah, the music in this game is just fantastic. You have, like, we don't hit all of them, but like all the towns have their specific specific music with them. There's, I think, each one of the ending dungeons, because all the 3 storylines, the Dragon, Fairy, and Jumi storyline, they all have a main dungeon at the end of them, and they all have their own specific music list to them. Same with the bosses for those respected storylines. There's so many good tracks in this game. They reuse some of them, but it's just fantastic.
So from a story perspective, it's worth noting real quick. So there's the 3 main storylines. There's the dragon, the Jumi, and the fairy. But there are also a lot of other events that make up their own storylines that are about specific characters. Niccolo, who's hanging out with us right now, He's got his own set of 5 or 6 events, and Gilbert, the jerk centaur, also has a huge list of events to go through where he hits on all of the attractive ladies in the Legend of Mana world of Fadiel.
Yeah, there's some of them for characters we don't even see. Like, as Jay alluded to earlier, there is the half quest, air quotations, called the Two Sorcerers, which involves you fighting 2 sorcerers in Domina, which then they move into your house, and that's 2 small kids, a girl and a boy, and they have their own set of quests that are specific to them. There's Alazul, which we had in the Mecha Caverns. He's a key part to the Jumi storyline, but there's like characters we don't even touch. I think there's 2 quests that pertain to teachers from Geo, and just a whole bunch of them. Like, the game has got a lot of story if you look for it, I guess the correct way to put it.
Yeah, we're going to be mashing through all the text boxes. So as we start hitting the actual dragon story stuff, I'll talk a little bit about what's going on in the story. But for the most part, it's just going to be getting through those text boxes as fast as possible, because it's an RPG speedrun. So no one wants to see the story. You just want to go real fast.
And speaking of text boxes, generally you would see an RPG be ran in like the fastest language, which generally is usually Japanese, because less characters to actually put up on screen, which means faster text boxes. This one, I don't think it really matters, and the Japanese version, I don't know the specifics, the Japanese version has got a whole different list of balancing with it. Like, this run we go for a 2-handed sword that we get from a drop from an enemy, which will be coming up here in about 30-ish minutes maybe. And then there's a random glove drop from a mob that just is stronger on the Japanese version that runs will use. And so in essence, the Japanese version and the English version are just 2 separate games for balancing.
Yeah, you wind up. So I mentioned before, there are a lot of weapons that there's no point to ever use in the speedruns, but in Japanese, some of those weapons are way more viable because it's easy to get fast access to ones with much higher damage output. So we're seeing that power canceling, and it might be visibly noticeable that this weapon goes way, way faster than the 2-handed sword did. It's also worth noting there is a slightly higher damage per second strategy called jump canceling, where there are all the abilities, and many of them can be chained with various attacks, either your light attack or your power attack. Jump canceling involves doing a jump, which is one of your abilities, and a power attack, and then immediately leading that into an uppercut. So in addition to the abilities, the special techniques, the huge weapon variety, there's also certain techniques that you're able to do specific inputs, almost fighting game style, and do certain attacks. The problem with jump canceling is because you're having to chain an ability and an attack, as well as a specific input power attack, and these things move the enemy back, it's really, really hard to use jump canceling efficiently, and power canceling is a much more viable strategy, even though the damage per second is lower.
That was with that boss you just fought, you generally just don't want it to do a super attack, like every boss, but for what was happening, so it looked like he was just getting pushed into the wall the whole lot, so he couldn't really even do a super tech when he did a super tech. So that for what happened during that fight, that was a pretty good fight.
Yeah, that was very smooth. Bosses don't do damage just from touching them, but you get pushed back from their hitbox, and you can easily get locked in like that in a specific spot.
Which gets which gets really janky when you start coming across the bigger bosses, because their hitboxes not necessarily what their character model shows.
Yeah, hitboxes in this are more of a someone was thinking these things might be in this general area when they were coding the game. They're pretty weird. It takes a bit of getting used to with the hitboxes.
So now he's placing down artifacts to just get to just kind of get them down there on the ground now. And I think with item drops and like level drops with monsters, because the two weapons we get are, oh, actually before I go into that, we're going to pick up Guri, which is the goblin. And there's one thing I didn't allude to during the combat explanation of just, you know, how a lot of this is power canceling. There's a diamond next to your percentage health, because your health regens at the end of battle, so there's no like need for healing items or anything. But there's a diamond, like a crystal square diamond next to your percentage health, that when you have multiple characters in a party, an NPC and a pet, if you're close to them, there's a lightning bolt that goes in between your portraits, and that's called a synchro bonus. And we pick up Guri, because when he's close to you, or if you're close to him, you get a 50% increase to slash damage, which is every weapon we use in this category. And the two main NPCs we pick up, which is Lark, which we'll be seeing here in 2 minutes, if that. He has a 50% dragons. I don't know if dragoons are actually in that too or not, but he gets a 50% increase of damage towards dragons. So when you're close to them, if you get lucky with NPCs because you can't control them, if you're next to both of them, you're getting a 100% increase on damage on specific enemies. Which before the main bosses we fight in this category are all dragons, so it's just a massive increase if you're close to them. But
with every splash screen so with this one, we've started the first of the dragon storyline quests. Each storyline has 5 explicit quests that are a part of it, and you can tell because you get with every event that starts, you have that splash screen that says the name of the event, and those 5 for each of the storylines gets a nice pretty logo attached to it, which in the case of the dragon storyline is very unsurprisingly a dragon. I'm pretty sure, and in spite of the fact that I've primarily run Jimmy, I don't actually remember what the splash screen is for those, because I'm hitting...
fairy splash arts, do they kind of just fly in sparkly, or am I just going crazy?
I'm pretty sure they fly in sparkly. I know the dragon one spins in, and in spite of the fact that I primarily run
the one
Jimmy,
thing with placing artifacts,
I don't actually remember what the splash screen does for those, because I'm hitting X really fast.
I think it just kind of blooms like a flower.
That sounds like it would be appropriate for it.
So you can just lay them all down. One thing with placing artifacts and why we kind of place them, like why we place some before, when really we only hit so many odd places, and we just need to hit a threshold for our artifact count to get to the end of the game. So we that's your wheel for artifacts. There's only a certain amount once, but there's a limit you can have to how many you can have. The other thing is placing in your wheel, which is the thing when you see the cursor on the world map go to the bottom the bottom right hand corner. That's your wheel for artifacts, and there's only a certain amount you can have. But the other thing is him placing down the artifacts. Distance from the home plot, which is in the middle, and then the enemy's level in what number it is on the list of how many artifacts is dictated by 2 factors. So there's other factors too, but the 2 main ones are the monsters in there, because it's distance from the home plot, which is in the middle, and then what number it is on the list of how many artifacts you placed. So Mac Caverns is usually going to have a weaker amount of monsters in there, because it's the 3rd one you place down, and same, or if you go with the highway. But we want to get Bone Fortress to a certain threshold for a certain weapon to drop, and the boss he's coming up on is the Hitodama, and it is a big source of RNG. Just like that, he just went straight into a super tech before Ellervated to even have the chance to move and get damage in on him.
Yeah, this boss, every time he disappears, is about a 10 to 11 second time loss, and he will do it a lot. Generally speaking, sometimes he's real nice and he just sits there while you punch him in the face, but usually he just vanishes over and over again.
Yeah, yesterday, the practice run that Ellervated was doing, he got a super techless Hirodama, which was really nice to watch that go down. And honestly, two super techs like right away, it's still a time loss, but it's not like I've gotten far worse luck on that and still made a good time.
Yeah, I would definitely say that was an amazing Hirodama just there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
Do you know more about the Dragon Percent? Because I haven't ran it casually for so long, so I kind of mashed through it, and I don't know a whole lot of the background of the storyline outside of kill these bosses.
yeah, so storyline on this one, as the text flies by on the screen, Draconis here has been banished to the underworld. His power has supposedly been robbed by 3 different dragons. At least that's what he's telling you. But the character with the multiple spinning arms that we talked to a little earlier in this quest, Olban, who's one of the 7 wisdoms, and there's a whole bunch of stuff with him and the mythology of this world that we're just gonna skip over because this run doesn't even hit on it at all. But so he flat out refers to Draconis' plans as evil, and Lark doesn't even bat an eye at it. And you have just made an agreement to work for this guy, going and murdering dragons to help him out. So this it's a pretty typical RPG kind of quest. You're working for a guy that's the bad guy, but he currently holds power over your soul. So you don't really have a choice, and the game's pretty obvious about it being evil. It's worth...
I mean, his castle's in the background in the underworld. That I don't think good people hang out down there.
So one of the lands that just got placed, the junkyard, it's worth mentioning that that one is getting placed now because there's payoff from the mana levels from it. Each piece of land has different levels of mana to it. There are, is it 7 or 8 different elements of mana?
Maybe I can look into that. You can, I would say continue on with the commentary.
So each of the mana levels, certain enemies become stronger or weaker as the mana is increased or decreased. Well, you can't decrease it, but as mana that they are strong with goes up in their area, they are more powerful. As mana that they're weak to goes up in their area, they're weaker. So you can influence enemies by putting down specific lands next to other lands. Even Guri, our little goblin friend, he's only available because we maxed out the Shade mana level in Lumina. He only appears when that happens, and there's several other demi-humans that the places they show up in, you have to hit certain mana levels for them to even appear.
Yeah, there's 8 of them.
Cool.
In Legend of Mana.
The
I think, no, you go ahead.
Part of the complexity of running this game, because the combat, as you can see, is basically power cancel, super tech, and then there's a lot of movement tech as well. The figuring out what to put where and in what order has a huge influence on how fast encounters can go.
Yeah, and when you place artifacts down, they take half and they give half. So they take half of all of their surrounding areas, and then they give half of their element, because all the artifacts have a base element amount to them, and it's different. Like the desert's gonna have a max of salamander because that's the fire element, and same with the underworld has a max of shade, which is the darkness element, and that's why we placed it next to Lumina so we can get movement.
So one of the things that I don't think we've talked about before now, and it's not super obvious watching the run, but when moving in and out of combat, there's generally a wiggle to the movement. In combat, you essentially do a two-step routine. One step is really long and the other step is really short. So if you wiggle so that your long steps are in the direction you want to be going, the movement resets between the wiggle, so you can get around extremely quickly by wiggling into the direction you want to head.
Lark, he had this happen earlier. Quickly before I go into that, go into what I was going to say. The whole purpose of this one is we have to go up these mountains to kill 3 of these dragoons. Now, that was a really good fight. That one's a little different because I forgot to pay attention if he did a super tech right away, but that boss specifically has a chance to just do a super tech, and you kind of just have to wait it out. But the other two
he opened up with a spell right at the start.
Okay. So then the other 2 that he faces is he has to defeat 3 of those that are similar. He can move, so he can position himself to be right next to it, so he has enough time to cancel the magic spell if he tries to cast it. But there's status elements in this game they're like every other status element. Like Confusion flips your controls around to only your movement, not your buttons. And Poison just does, I think, a residual amount of damage to you. But there's 2 really bad ones. Is Dizzy, which you can hear. It has its own like sound clip to it, but you have stars above your head. And the other one is Stun, which Lark had earlier a few fights ago, and it's a green little green bubbles essentially above your head, and that is you just can't move during that, and those are just bad time losses. But this area has got Shriek Nips, which are these demon turnips that can inflict dizzy and stun on you, so they can be a bad time loss if you get caught in that.
So from a story perspective, you've basically just shown up at this village and the mountain that's above it because Lark has said, hey, let's go hunting for dragons like my master wanted. So you've just rolled in and are very obviously here with an evil guy to murder a dragon, and the dragoons of that dragon, which are these bird-looking dudes we're fighting, really don't appreciate it, so they're trying to stop you, but as you can see, they don't stand a chance against power canceling.
Go for it.
Yeah.
I feel like you're perfectly fine on that one.
Hey, you guys mind if I catch up on some donations here?
Go for it. I feel like
Awesome.
you're perfectly fine on that one.
So we got a bunch to start. So I'm gonna catch up on a couple of things. We had a $100 donation from Perksley that says, "Hey, let's get started."
Sounds good.
A $5 donation from Stedrin. No message, but thank you. By the way, I hope there's not echo right now in my audio. I don't think there's supposed to be. A $10 donation from Breach AFK that says, let's get those donations rolling, everyone. Good luck to the runners, especially DD, as I'm putting this towards having a thief in Final Fantasy 1. Sorry, DD. $5 donation from Lucas Sleesman. Monk is the best character for speedruns by far. That's for Final Fantasy 1. $5 donation from the Optimistic Afro. And a $100 donation from Xylon the Aged. Also, no echo, good. And
Hard
they
mode
activated.
activated.
So kind to let
Brutal.
me decide where to put that money.
Thank you very much for
So
the
I put it
donations.
towards No Sanctuary Heart
Yes.
for Link to the Past. So the next race they will not be allowed to pick up the Sanctuary Heart.
Hard mode activated.
Brutal.
And thank you very much for the donations.
Yes, thank you very much.
So we just finished the last bird boss, and in this game, birds aren't jerks. It's only in dragons. Dragons are jerks.
Yeah, you're the jerk in this case.
That's fine. Someone's got it. So earlier, like in this room, he ran past a bird statue, which you don't want to touch before you defeat the bosses, because they'll send you to either the village or the beginning of the dungeon. Like, I think it just sends you to the village, so then you have to go through all the battles and all the screens again, and it's just a massive time loss. But it's very simple. It's very easy to pass. And then coming up here shortly, we'll try to give a heads up for it, is a loud noise warning that if you're wearing headphones, we recommend you take them off.
Yeah, regarding the having to get through the fights again, every time you leave and return to a screen, the fights restart. For grinding for weapons, that is really excellent because you just get to the fight you need to hit up, pop off and on the screen as you finish the fight each time. But for anything where you accidentally transition screens, or say touching that bird statue and getting sent back to the start, that means every fight has returned to its spot.
So loud noise warning is coming up here now. So if you're wearing headphones and your stream's loud, I would recommend taking your headphones off, because this can be a really loud noise. And the noise is gone now, you're fine.
I could be mistaken. I think they just set the exact same noise to play 4 times, so it essentially winds up stacking the volume, which is why it gets so loud.
I think that's why.
It's brutal.
At that point, he just counterattacked those the Yetis, and as a perspective, he countered. I think that the second Yeti he defeated got attacked once, and then he counterattacked it, and it almost just killed it outright. So, like, counterattack damage retaliation is such a huge factor in doing good amounts of damage. And coming up here is the second, like, the other main RNG aspect is Ellervated, which is the first dragon you fight. And he's a jerk. He's essentially the bird of this game. His hitbox is wonky. He has the ability to fly across the battle area, and he can chain those. I've had it to where he's done 2 in a row without me being able to do damage. He can do like super techs. I've had him do a super tech into a fly, and during all of the like flies and super techs or whatever, he's completely invulnerable. So it's a massive time loss.
Yeah, bosses in this, they just love to eat up time if you get unlucky. So one of the nice things about the Dragon Run over particularly the Junior Run is you get these really cool variety of bosses. Because we're talking about, they can be really trolly, but from a casual perspective, the game gives you all the tools you need to handle these bosses. They can go invulnerable, but so can you. They can do screen-wide damage, but so can you. The Jumi run in particular, though, has one boss that you wind up fighting 7 times. So we're definitely seeing the run that's got a lot more nice visual variety between the areas you go and the bosses you fight.
Yeah, and a 2 super tech Ellervated is fantastic. It might not seem like it is, but I've seen that fight go so much worse that a 2 super tech is just good.
Yeah, that was a really slick fight.
Now coming up is Bone Fortress. He's going to place on some more artifacts. You know, we're trying to just kind of minimize the amount so we can gain more artifacts as time goes on without having, like, optimizing our artifact wheel so that we don't get capped down on something and then miss out on an artifact drop. And then in the Bone Fortress, the first thing we have to do is Field Trip, which is there's a magic school in the town Geo, which is the artifact Tome of Magic he has in his wheel, but we don't go to it in this speedrun. I think the only one that actually does is Jumi, because there's quests. There's like 3 Jumi quests in Geo.
Yeah, Jumi winds up spending a lot of time in Geo. One of the things that, as he moves around on the world map, in the upper left, there is one of the mana spirits, and that represents the day of the week. And I believe that has a small influence on how much damage you do with certain elements when you use instruments. Since we don't use instruments, that doesn't matter. And there are certain NPCs in certain locations on certain days of the week. The Dragon Run doesn't deal with any of those NPCs, so that doesn't have to be accounted for or worried about whatsoever, which is really nice. In Jumi, the map has to be very carefully placed and locations gone to or not gone to in a really particular order to try to optimize what day of the week you're on during what quest.
Yeah, and so with the field trip, to wrap that one up real quick, is he entered in, he talked to the person he had to talk to, which is the small student in the green right behind him on the screen, and he went to the right screen and went back in, because when you go to the right screen, you try to get, you're supposed to make a concoction out of 3 ingredients. And when you go to the right screen and you try to get the ingredients, one of them doesn't have it, or he just gives you the wrong ingredient. So the easiest way to do it is go in there and leave back, and the game thinks you tried to give them the wrong formula, and it tells you like, oh, I need the ingredients. So then when you go back to the right screen, they have the right ingredients, and you go talk to the 3 specific people, turn in those ingredients, the quest is done, and then you're able to continue on with the Ghost of Nemesis, which is includes the other part of the RNG farming that we have to do.
Yeah, this is already the 3rd out of 5 Dragon storyline quests that are on here. One of the really nice things about the Dragon Run is it very, very quickly gets you into the events that are directly applicable to the story and just goes with them straight away. So as the storyline runs go, it is the fastest one. I don't remember exactly what the times are on Ferry, but it is
it's an hour, world record's an hour and 48 minutes for Ferry and 2 hours and 10 minutes for Jumi, and this world record's like an hour and 32. Or like an hour and 31, I think, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, it's a pretty big chunk faster. 20 or 40 minutes longer than the other, or shorter than the other storylines.
I'm calling right now, it's going to be Brave Blade. So these are the 2 enemies we have to farm for Brave Blade. We have a chance of getting them before we start the farming adventure. And never mind, I called it wrong. And this is the main point, because we fight these enemies later on in other dungeons, specifically one other dungeon, but the percent drop, because that dungeon gets placed so later in, is lower for that, because the item table is, I think, 8 to 10 items per monster, and it varies by level. And since your level is the level of the enemy's monsters is dictated by like how far away they are from home, and the number of artifacts you place before it, that right now the Brave Blade's a 12.6% chance of dropping, while in later on it's a 6.3. So you want to try to farm it now.
The nice thing is you do at least have to pass by these guys twice. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, there we go.
So that was essentially no farming, because you have to go past them at this point. It's worth mentioning, so we've got our little pet with us, and we're activating these switches. The whole reason that Monster Corral and picking up this pet is necessary in this run, yes, the boost to slash damage from having the synchronization with this pet is nice, assuming he chooses to stand next to you. But for the Bone Fortress, you need a pet or demi-human to activate switches with you. So he is absolutely essential in here for that switch we just saw, and the 3 switches earlier at the start.
And now the damage output is like ridiculously high. Like he's doing, it looks like he's not really doing that much damage, but he's doing at least a bar and some change per counter strike.
Yeah, the when you, especially with Sierra, the health bars are a little misleading. The health bar starts out red. The next full bar you get, I believe it's 100 HP per bar.
Yeah, it is.
So it starts out red. The next one you get is yellow. The next one is green. The next one is that sort of cyan blue, and then green, and then blue, and then green, and then blue. So fighting her just there, it looked like it wasn't really doing a whole lot, but it was actually going through entire bars at a time. It was hard to tell because it was the same colors on the same bars several times.
Yeah, and the getting the Brave Blade drop on technically no farming is just huge on time save, because that can eat up anywhere to 3 to 5 minutes, and you need it for, well, you don't necessarily need it, but just the damage of what you get from it makes all the bosses go quicker. It makes even the normal fights go quicker, because there's certain monsters in one of the dungeons that his practice run, he didn't get the drop, and he just decided to go through the run. They went from taking 2 hits to 3 hits, and it's just that, like, it's those small time saves you get. And the first boss we hear is Deathbringer. He's a typical boss. He doesn't have anything really trolly. He has some super attacks that can take a while, and I think he has a teleport, but like the teleport is relatively quick compared to other bosses and their movement.
Yeah, he's pretty mild and laid back compared to a lot of the bosses. His hitbox is also pretty sensible as well, which is really nice. It's weird. You'd think the floating half skeleton dude would have the weird hitbox, but oh man. But it actually is not too bad at all. So, and I'm sure you can see just those giant chunks of his HP bar vanishing with every power cancel. So from a storyline perspective, before the fight starts, that boss, Deathbringer, who is relatively important in the history of the world, mentions that he's fought with Lark before. He's pretty clearly, from looking at him and the location he's in, got an undead thing going on. But we start getting an implication at this point of the fact that Lark has been around for a long time and in service to Draconis for quite a while.
Yeah, and this is Legend of Mana is part of the people know Secret of Mana, and it's part of that storyline, but it's a spin-off as opposed to an actual continuation of the storyline.
Yeah,
so it uses.
Sorry.
You go ahead.
It's the first non-numbered entry that isn't directly part of it, and it definitely, interestingly enough, has a feel that it's really obvious how it went from Secret of Mana to Seiken Densetsu 3 to Legend of Mana, but we don't see a Seiken Densetsu 4 until Dawn of Mana on the PS2.
And that was the Jujara, which is the Bone Dragon. That was the first Jujara fight, and you fight him again right afterwards. But luckily, you don't heal, since you automatically heal, so it's just another monster.
Yeah, it's worth noting, and hopefully we won't see this come up in the run at all, but unlike a lot of RPGs, this game is very, very generous about how combat works. You have 100% health at the start of every fight, period. Your health goes up as you are still in the fight and alive. So if the boss wrecks you pretty hard, you just need to back off and try to survive for a bit, and your health will slowly refill. If you die, the bar slowly fills back up, and assuming you have an NPC or a pet with you and they don't go down, you will pop back up. And finally, if you do lose a fight, you start all of about an inch away from the fight when you choose to continue.
I mean, obviously, if you do lose a fight and your whole party wipes, or if you die, it's generally kind of the fight just takes forever, because the NPC is dumb. Computer controlled allies are just slow. They kind of just walk around. They have epic stare downs that make no sense. But for the most part, yeah, you're looking at it's getting a game over isn't overly detrimental. It's just getting to that point is kind of detrimental of having the game over.
Best case scenario, if you go down with an NPC, is the NPC's either already dead or gets murdered immediately after you.
Yeah, and the upside is that since we're fighting bosses and it's a speed run, as that is an RPG, so we're taking.
Shikaku, thank you.
We're taking a hit of what I lost my train of thought. We're taking a lot of damage because it's a speedrun RPG, so we're we're kind of underleveled for what we're trying to do, but that doesn't really matter a whole lot. But the NPCs will take ridiculous amounts of damage for super techs. Like I think Guri got hit by one of Archivators, and he went from like 100 to 61%. So. But in this part, we go to the White Forest to find the last of the mana crystals, which is held by Fadis and her dragoon Sierra, which we met earlier. We fought her in the Bone Fortress. She is Lark's sister, and this is supposed to be like this whole area before the boss is supposed to be one giant maze. But since we know the route, it's not really much of a maze. It's just the small tidbit I was going to make a mention of was Lark says that, we'll just follow my nose and follow it, like Tuki and Sam. But he won't tell you what direction if you're going the right direction until you try to leave the screen. So if you don't know the way through this area, you'll hit certain areas and then he'll tell you like, you're going the wrong direction, and it just wastes time.
In the speedrun, though, because we know the right way, I always find it really funny because it's like, yeah, it's the right way. Yeah, that's the right way. Every single screen transition.
Unnecessary text boxes.
So real quick, I wanted to mention about the NPCs, though I don't believe anyone's done it for a speedrun. As you mentioned, the NPCs are pretty dumb, which is a bummer, but it is possible to turn on two-player control, so a second player can control the NPC.
RPG Limit Break, I think it was 2016 or 2015, had a co-op fairy percent.
Oh, nice.
That is so cool.
they had the other person was controlling Niccolo for a lot of them because they were just able to change. Because what's better than having one person doing power cancels? Two people doing power cancels. Because the damage output is just that much better.
And there's a slight stun from it too, so you can lock stuff down with that.
Yeah, they were locking down so many things, but I didn't get the chance to watch the whole run. And the run's like a few years old, but it's still, if you want to see like a two-player co-op or two-player run of this game, it is possible because a lot of the areas, or a lot of the main storyline things come with an NPC attached to them. So you're able to just, if you want to play it casually with a friend, you're able to do that because you can also, sorry to cut you off, Jay.
Oh, that's fine.
You're able to load up another person's save file with their super text attached, their equipment on there, and the level and everything. You just you have to go talk to an innkeeper about an abandoned house in Domina, and then you go there and it checks the other memory cards, or the memory cards you have in there, and you can load up a save file. So you have the option of having another person's character with you.
And we also already mentioned Geo a couple times, and Geo is a huge town with a lot of interesting stuff going on in it. And one of them is there's an arena where when you're doing two-player with a loaded-in character, you can go there and do one-on-one fights. I believe a lot of the knowledge about specific damage output in this game has been gathered from taking the two-player characters there, setting up arena fights, and being able to check just how much health is being lost from hits from different weapons.
Yeah, there's a save file you can download on speedrun.com that has like a character with exactly 100 HP with this much defense. But this fight that he's doing right now, that was a really good counter. He's fighting Vadis and Sierra at once, and what you want to do, and this is where Guri can be a very nuisance, is he throws his axe and it knocks, when it hits something, it knocks them back. Now Vadis, the problem with Vadis is that when she gets knocked back, she ends up actually doing, oh wow, that is a really funny place for her to die. I've never seen that.
That's a weird one.
Yeah, and when she gets knocked back, she teleports back into her original spot. So Yuri checking his axe, it can miss, it can go through characters, so it can hit Vadis, knocking her back. She teleports back in and just causes a time loss. But with
What is going on right
I don't know, she is glitching out, man. That fight can go terrible, and that fight honestly wasn't that bad, especially with Guri dying that soon. Because what you want to do is you want to have Guri just to distract Sierra, so you can just focus on Vadis. Because her super attacks are just like big AoE things that you don't want to deal with. And then once you defeat Vadis, you're able to just go to Sierra and do what you did in Bone Fortress, which is just counter-strike her to death.
So from a storyline perspective, it's worth mentioning that while we had gone there with Lark to get the final Mana Stone that his boss Draconis wanted, he just buggered off as soon as he got it and said that our duty is fulfilled. Now, back at the very start of this, Draconis said that we were essentially like half alive. So it's a little weird because it never really wraps up us getting the rest of our soul back, but I guess we're okay now because we fulfilled our duty. And Vadis informs you that all of this evil stuff is going to cause some serious problems and wants you to help out, but because we can never just help directly, you have to prove your strength first. So that's what that entire fight was about and why Lark buggered off instead of helping out.
Another loud sound. It's not as loud as Norn Peaks, but it can be they got smarter with their sound design on this part. So if you have headphones, I recommend taking them off for a split second. So when she slices through all of the knights is when you can put it on. And you are good to go. I don't know why I actually say good to go. You probably can't hear me if you have. But now we have to go through the underworld again, which is the first like 2/3 of it is the same route we took to go fight Hirodama the first time, and then there's just a few additional rooms that we have to go through before we go get on with the final story through the bulk of the last part of the Dragon storyline.
Yeah, we've started the final quest for Dragon, but this is actually going to take a fair chunk of time. The final quests for each of the storylines are not fast little things. They are big, sprawling events that, in some cases, this one will take place in 2 different locations before it's done.
Yeah, and like the Juni one, like only takes place in one area, but it's just long because you fight so many battles to get stuff back for the gem.
Yeah, almost half of the jewel beasts you fight in the Jumi run are in the final dungeon of the Jumi run.
But yeah, this is the right outside of where we fought Hirodama. We go through the spiked door, and then surprise, there's more dungeon. So we're gonna loop around. I don't think we get into any more battles. Actually, it's just kind of like more map movement, and that's the one cool thing about this game is there's no random encounters. The battles, you can see them sitting there on the map, but the problem is you can't run from battles. So whatever battles you get into, you have to fight. but since they're kind of like, you know, it's usually just like a battle a screen or 2 battles a screen, it's like, it's not overly terrible. Oops, and we had a mishap on the text boxes.
Most of the right menu options in this game, especially during major storyline stuff, is the second option, and characters love to yammer before they give you a choice. So because the text boxes go by pretty quickly while you're mashing, it is very, very easy to choose the wrong option.
And not to mention, there is a slight delay, like with your menuing. Like, if you ever get this game either through emulator or like through emulator or the disc itself, is you'll notice that there is a delay in the menuing when you're trying to change your skills and equip super text and equip weapons. That doesn't help with text boxes and moving down to the right option and everything.
So storyline-wise, at this point, we've discovered that Lark and Sierra are brother and sister, which, because we know Lark is super long-lived, makes me wonder just how long Sierra has been hanging out alive above ground while Lark's been trapped in the underworld. But I'm not going to worry about that too much. Lark, it is revealed, has made a deal with Draconis that once he helps him out, they will fight it out, and then one of them gets to return to the world of the living. But because Draconis, as previously stated, is evil, he just turns Lark into an evil centaur that fights you. I'm not sure why a centaur, but sure. And this fight is going real nice.
The super tech might have been overkill, but either way,
But it's pretty.
It is pretty. That was a fantastic centaur Lark. He can do like his. We fight one more of that boss type, and that's actually the only duplicate boss we fight is 2 centaurs, and their super techs don't take that long.
So, I was doing some research on this because for whatever reason in my mind, I always assumed those were the same centaur, even though Lark fades out right here. Because they've got a similar color palette. But I was doing some research and looking at the specific sprites for them. I'll talk a little bit more about the other centaur once we get to it, because right now there's a cool little thing happening on the map. So right now, the underworld is transforming into a different location on the world map, which I believe this is the only location that does that, and it just does it during the storyline.
Mm-hmm. You can't leave, I don't think. You can't leave. Once after this animation, you're at the gates, and I don't think you can actually leave to the world map.
Yeah, I believe you have the chance to say you don't want to do it just yet, but Vidis talks to you about it, and once you start, you are 100% locked in, so you've got to see this to completion. But fortunately, because of the... Oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, because of the very generous policy on dying in a fight in this game, it's not a big deal. If you were playing this casually and get trapped in this, you would wind up having to grind a bit, but you wouldn't just be flat out stuck.
Yeah, I remember casually this place took me like 2 hours to do because I was a kid and I had no idea what I was doing, where I was going, and everything. But I was going to make a mention of the design of the game and the aspect that I really enjoy the design of the game with the sprite-based work for, obviously the sprites, but then you have your drawn backgrounds that kind of give you a nice, not like a, kind of like an, it might be isometric. I don't know if that's the right word, but this is a nice aesthetic. It's something you rarely saw on the PlayStation 1. And you rarely see that nowadays.
Yeah, I usually make the joke that this comes from an alternate timeline where the people working at Square heard about the specs on the Sega Saturn and said, wow, what if we did just use all of that incredible hardware to make really beautiful 2D? And it's really beautiful, but everyone else was really excited about chunky, gross polygons at the time. Which, don't get me wrong, I love that aesthetic too, but it certainly has not aged as well as this.
No, yeah, and that's that's always a discussion for later days. I do agree that like the chunky polygons, that like if I'm playing a new game that has chunky polygons, like they're kind of cartoonish, like what is it? Like Final Fantasy VII is one that pops in my head where it's like it's chunky polygons, but like they're kind of like Lego chunky polygons where you have like disformed arms and all that stuff, and it's not a fully realized 3D model. Those are really nice. I enjoy those. Like that hasn't aged well, but I can still play that.
Stylized stuff like that ages a lot better than the like Final Fantasy VIII went for really realistic compared to Final Fantasy VII, and yeah, it ages differently when you go for stylized over realistic.
Mm-hmm. But so he just activated the trap, and if you like, it was very quick. And you have to pay attention for it on the right side of the trap because he goes to these hallways, and that was the lead into going towards Draconis' room, because obviously Draconis is going to be the final boss. On the right side, there were 3 colored gems underneath dragon statues, and the whole point is we have to go fight these 3 bosses. Now, the first one is this one. The first 2 are actually just regular dragon enemies treated as a boss. As for why they did it that way, I don't know. But, and this is one of those like version differences. So I can't remember, I want to say this guy had significantly more HP, or he had significantly less HP. I know they changed the HP value of the Sky Dragon.
Yeah, the dragons get encountered at various points. I believe we'll see them again in the final area, the Tree of Mana, and they just have health bars forever. So, this being a speedrun, we know exactly where to go, but I definitely remember playing this game casually when I was much younger, and these areas get very confusing very fast. So, Ellervated here knows exactly which screen to go to and what to do. It goes by real quick, but as you mentioned before, you can wind up spending a lot of time here when you're playing casually, especially if you're playing without a map.
Yeah, the upside of like some of the other areas is that they're a little straightforward, because they don't normally involve they involve puzzles, but not to this extent. Like I think Lucemia, the final area in the ferry percent, is relatively straightforward, like even from a casual aspect. And for this fight, he's going to be knocking the land dragon into the furthest right wall he can, because he has to wait for his when he defeats the fight, the characters walk over to the door that he's right next to. You see the beam of light coming off the screen, and it just saves time if you do it that way, because Gary can just saunter his butt over there, kind of like what he's doing right now. He slowly walks, and he could be a time loss depending on where he is positioned on the screen.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of fights where you move to specific spots afterwards, but there are at least a couple in every storyline. And casually, it's not the kind of thing you necessarily even notice, but speedrunning, it's very important to optimize and get as close to that finishing spot before the fight ends as possible, because a lot of times you or the NPCs will just mosey at a nice mellow pace over to where they need to be.
So the other thing, talking about positioning, is that when you get into a battle, it's in a segmented chunk of the screen you're in. Kind of like how the camera pans over and then it kind of just locks. It puts like an invisible wall on both sides. And since you get kind of free movement, like what you want to do is you want to get to a point to like kind of optimize your movement to where you're the closest to the left wall or the right wall, depending on which direction you're going, but also able to pick up everything, so you're not like trying to like optimize your downtime while also minimizing your wait time.
That sort of thing. Yeah, there's because there are so many fights over the course of the run, there's just huge potential for time saved or loss based on how efficiently you're moving the enemies around and picking things up and that sort of thing.
Right there, kind of like that fight he just did, where he defeated him and he grabbed one coin, but the coin disappeared right away, like right when he was getting to the edge of the screen. So it kind of just, he saved us some time right there.
Yeah, that was like that. It doesn't look like much, but that was an amazing example of a really slick optimization on that fight.
So there's something
So-
peculiar about this, right?
Yeah, when the first time I played this back in the day, and for a long time, I never really realized that these sprites were that different. This one has a bird-like beak on his head and feathers instead of a big, thick tail, which to me really brings back the wind callers, those dragoons of Privator back on Norn Peaks. So I always wondered if there was some other. Once I learned that, I was wondering if there was some other dragoon in service to Draconis that had also been turned into a centaur, and why Draconis turns him into a centaur, but he's a dragon. I don't know. I never worried about that part too hard, but I found it really interesting that this boss has a very, though similar to Lark, similar to the wind collars in the little parts that are different look.
And so now we have, from here, he entered the right doorway, and it's just a straight shot, one more battle, and he just kind of goes up a lot to get to to Draconis' throne room. Like, and it's yeah, go for it, actually. So he has this one fight, and this is the monster I was talking about earlier, where, like,
Hey, can I go ahead and read a couple of donations real quick?
yeah, go for it, actually.
Okay. We had a $10 donation from Dragon Strike. That's Long a Man as a file name for a Ryer in the new game, or A Link to the Past race next. We had a $50 donation from Lord of the Hyphens. $20 to the Zelda file name RPGchick-a-thon. And $30 to turn off the W flag on the Final Fantasy IV free enterprise race. And then I just had a $15 donation come in from Gilgamesh with no message. So just a reminder is there's room for one more file name in the next run if you want to grab it. But yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Indeed.
Yeah, it's really exciting hearing those donations coming in. We could talk about this game all day, but for those people watching right now, please donate. I'd much rather hear your donation comments than like, I love this game. I'll talk about it till the cows come home, but we're definitely here for the donations. I'd love to hear you guys contributing. That's really exciting.
I can hear my voice all day long. I can talk to myself all day long, but the main reason we're doing this is for the donations. This fight is a key example of super techs that don't take that long. Like, he hasn't done the bite super tech, which is fantastic because he just beat it, and that was a fantastic bonus fight. But his hitbox is exceptionally janky. Like, he had really good accuracy, but like when I fight that, I have to. There's a guide for Dragon Descent that suggests that you sit on the top part of the screen because that's the easiest way to hit his hitbox. But his pushback box can be something ridiculous. And at the end of every storyline is an unskippable cutscene that usually actually takes no inputs. Dragon Percent's weird, and it involves 2. But like
oh, sorry.
no, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I know the Jumi one is particularly long and is a great time for a bathroom break as you're getting towards the end of the run. Dragon's not quite long enough for that, but it is at least a nice little breather as we're coming up towards the end of the game here.
Yeah, I think the Jumi one's like 4 minutes or so, like just something ridiculous. And then this one I think is about a minute and a half. I don't know about Fairy. I haven't ran that Fairy storyline in a long time.
Yeah, so from a story perspective, just to clean things up on this dragon story, Draconis has been defeated. His castle has sunk back into the underworld. And Lark is apparently going to be trapped there for 1,000 years. And I don't know if he's said it or not yet. He's going to mention the fact that he's not going to be stuck there that long. He apparently is not so confident this massive, fearful curse that Sierra can't even touch him because of. Here we go. Yeah. He's not worried about it. He's like, yeah, I'll figure something out.
And so now he did his 2 inputs, because this is weird. They're not like right next to each other either. It's like one, you have to advance a text box for Lark, and then you have text boxes between other characters, and then you have to advance another random text box for Lark. Like they're not like I think they're like the beginning of like his 2 chunks. But to close off the storyline, we get a nice like closure to it. We're returning the mana crystals back to the dragons that we defeated. And we find out at the end that Lark did make it out of the underworld just fine. Not to ruin that spoiler.
Yeah, it's pretty humorous because you get the impression that really quickly you're just going around putting stuff right, and then boom, he's already ready to go.
Which makes me wonder, how long did it take you to put everything right?
Yeah, were you doing this for 1,000 years, or has it been like a couple days and he's already figured out a way around the curse? All right, so this always cracks me up because the next event we're going to do before we wrap up the game is once we place a few lands that we're never going to visit because we don't need to. After this really serious, intense dragon storyline and finishing it off and beating this big, terrible boss in his palace in the underworld, we're going to go to the beach and we're going to hang out with a couple penguin pirates that are trying to sort out their relationship.
And crabs.
Oh yeah, all the crabs, just everywhere crabs.
And this is just a big artifact dump that we do here. It's like we'll never visit these areas. But this one we see, like we place down the artifacts for every one of the main hub towns, but we only enter 2 of them, and one of them is only for Fairy's Light and Guri, while the other one is for 2 quests.
Yeah, this quest that we're about to embark on, which is just the best because it's called Summer Lovin'. It gives out 2 artifacts at the end. There's a large number of quests that give out 2 artifacts if you have enough space in your wheel, but will only give out 1 otherwise. So it's very important that those artifacts get dumped before this quest starts, as opposed to after. So on that prior screen, we probably saw those red crabs wandering around. There's a few screens we'll see throughout the course of this little event where they're just kind of bopping all over the place. And there is, I can't remember if it's an event you unlock or an artifact you unlock by crushing enough of them, but we don't want to crush any of them because we pause briefly while they explode into a million shell shards. And we'd much rather just run past them.
Yeah, I think it's an event, because I think the only artifact you get from like something that isn't a quest or whatever is, I want to say it's the orchard, the golden seed.
That sounds right. So I love back on the music, just the really like bright, cheery music in this area. It's really pleasant and fun.
Yeah, and this is one of my favorite tracks.
So when playing through this to try to unlock that event, these rooms always feel like there are not enough crabs in them, and you cannot crush them fast enough before they run off the screen. But when speedrunning, because they are in the way and problematic, it always feels like they are just, every single one wants to run straight into you. So it's always very satisfying when you get through the room like that and not a single one touches you, even though they're just swiveling all over the place. So, Mancat, do you know by any chance, because we're probably going to see it during this fight, I know there's a point where the boss essentially changes phases. Is that required, or can you get through the fight before that happens?
Oh, when he drops one of his eyes?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you can, like, just right, yeah, you can get it with, I think I've seen it once or twice where you can get it without him switching that phase. It's just like a super tech.
Oh, that was a really smooth fight right there.
Yeah, because I've had it to where he's done 2 super techs like that where he drops his eye, and the problem is that I think it adds a little bit more startup time to his super tech. So like him dropping one of the eyes is. But yeah, now we get to see the solution to their marital problems, or their relationship problems, if there is any. And that crab that's standing behind the pink penguin, kind of like moving his claws up and down, if you talk to him before talking to the pink penguin, he'll tell you how many crabs you crushed, and he'll give you like a title of if you're evil or whatever for it, because if you crush all the crabs, you get like some sort of title, and then you crush him after talking to him.
So David, the penguin, has buggered off to go play pirate, and Valerie here will be raising the egg on her own, which is a bummer. But you know what, Valerie, you're too good for him. He doesn't deserve you. This artifact that's getting placed right now, there's, I believe it's one of the artifacts you unlock from the first quest into that area. So most of the lands have an initial quest that you need to do. Dungeons in particular, you have to finish off the first quest before you can place lands next to them. But the little seashell city that was placed, Pulpota Harbor, that one is a town, so you're able to place things next to it immediately, and we're able to just get on here to the final 2 events of the game.
So there he enters home and then he leaves it again, so that because he has to do that to have the game check if he has enough artifacts placed down to trigger the Cage of Dreams side quest or event, which leads into the Legend of Mana quest, which is the last one. And as simple as it looks, navigating through these 4 sproutlings, which are the little leaf things that isn't the adorable cactus with the pink flower, because in a casual playthrough, we don't see it in the speedrun. That cactus, you can run inside, go up to your room and talk to him, and he'll sit there and record. You tell him your adventures, and he jots them down on his little leaf notebook that's hanging on a post. That it just gives you his perspective of the quest you just did. And this is the half quest that just started that we won't touch.
Yeah, the entire west half of Domina, the first town, has been taken over by evil, scary pumpkins, and we super don't care and have other things to do.
But luckily, he didn't get caught up by any of the sproutlings that are moving around. He navigated through those 4 that are stationary pretty well. And this is a... Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, just to interject real quick, please make sure to select no. Okay.
Yeah, this is a big time save. Is that you can select no, and then you can run out of the screen that he just went into. My screen had to refresh, or my stream for him slowly died and had to refresh, so it might be further behind than I think I am. But he left that screen and he goes back in, and there's a whole there's a bunch of text boxes that you have to do that if you say no and you leave the screen, you skip all of them.
Yeah, there's a big, long philosophical argument between the stained glass looking guy who this always cracks me up. That stained glass is an ancient conjurer who has accidentally trapped himself in another dimension and is now a professor at a magic school.
His name Nuzak or something, I think.
Nunazak, yeah.
Yeah,
And
Nunazak, there we go.
it's him and the wisdom, the poet Pokiel, arguing over basically pessimism versus optimism and whether or not the mana tree should be healed by the sproutlings or not. Nunazak is really opposed to it, and he thinks humans are better off with it. Pokiel makes the point that yeah, the mana tree is extremely powerful, and people went to war over it, which gets mentioned in the very starting cutscene of the game during that minute and a half when we're first winding up. But Pokiel points out also that love and blessings and good things come from the mana tree. So even if, yes, some evil people fight over it, maybe it's worth having it around. And then to help out this Sproutling who wants to heal the mana tree and has been banished to this other world by Nunazak, we appear here, help him out, and then some random voice gives us the Sword of Mana so that we can get on to the final portion of the game.
And the cool thing about the Sword of Mana is it opens up the last dungeon, which is really, it opens up a portal to the last dungeon. Sorry, we placed it here, but you can place the Sword of Mana anywhere on the map as long as there's an open spot and it's, adjacent to another area. But here, Portal Harbor is one area where you have to actually place it near a body of water because it is a harbor. It makes sense aesthetically and flavor-wise. And the Sword of Mana can be placed above water, next to it follows basic map placement rules, but you can place it on any space if it follows those rules.
Yeah, there's a few locations that have pretty specific map requirements. There's a pirate ship that has to be directly on water. The desert, I believe, can't be adjacent to water.
Yeah, there's for the category that we didn't make a mention of it, there's 2 other categories that isn't just Dragon, Fairy, or Jumi. There's all storylines, which covers all 3 of them, and that was ran actually at RPG Limit Break this year. And then there's all events, which is like a 7 to 8 hour run where you hit all 68 events and in one playthrough. So there's a specific map tile. You can place all 23 artifacts. I think it's 23, it might be 24, where you can place all of them, you get all the quests you need to do, and it's... But yeah, for the most part, you generally just see like these specific storyline quests. And so the mana tree is a typical, it's a typical dungeon, except for the last chunk. There's like the last like half or third of it is a specific set of movements you have to do, or to make it quick. And outside that, he's just running through screens, doing battles when he has to do battles. And I can't think of anything else. I don't know if Jay's got anything else to say about the mana tree.
Yeah, this area is pretty straightforward. You were mentioning before it can be placed pretty much anywhere, and one of the things that's really heavily strategized in, I think, all of the runs, I'm not sure about all event, because in all event, there are so many things that are very particular about where things are placed, just so it's possible to unlock every event, because you can lock yourself out of certain events, fail certain events, make it impossible to place certain lands. The game won't let you set things up so that you can't beat the game, but you can definitely lock yourself out of things. But we place the sword and the tree of mana really close to our home, because as mentioned previously, the closer things are to home, the weaker stuff is in it. So even though the enemies here are pretty powerful because this is the last location we've placed, because this is so close to our house, they are a lot weaker than they would otherwise be if this was on, say, the far end of the map from home. And more than the threat of them killing you, just the time savings from them going down to a much smaller number of hits is really nice.
And there is a chocobo in this game that you can get as a pet.
Yeah, there's a couple cool little crossover bonuses. If you have certain games on your memory card, you can unlock things, and one of them is, I believe it's Final Fantasy VIII save.
It is 8, yeah.
Yeah, it lets you unlock a chocobo as your first pet instead of a rabbite. And I love the rabbite. We get to see it in the bottom right every time there's a loading screen. You'd think I'd hate it since it's directly associated with loading, but I'm always torn on whether I want to run a game with a chocobo or a rabbite when I'm playing casually, because they're both super fun.
So this next area that he's going to be into, is it's a 3x3 grid, like a 3x3 square. But the easiest way to like ascertain it is you're trying to hit all the corners. So you start in essentially the easiest way to, like, someone mentioned this, I can't remember who, and I'm sorry for not calling it and not giving you props to this. The first battle that he just fought is like home base, and the fight he's in now is first base. And then he goes to the upper left corner or upper left section to hit the next battle, which would be second, and then he ends on third base. So you kind of do like a baseball diamond movement to hit all the battles you need to do, and when you hit all the battles, you go into the final boss.
I had not heard it described that way before. That's actually a really, really good way to put it, especially for helping people visualize. It is really nice that nothing has to be planned out specifically as far as going where in what order, because you just have to make sure to hit all of the bases to clear out the enemies there. And I believe, I could be wrong about this, but I think the enemies at these 4 bases are one of the only places in the game where enemies don't respawn.
Yeah, because I think this is because you're only supposed to do these battles once each. And so this fight, the Tomato Man, small tidbit is during the hotfix, there was a run diversion that I had no idea what was going on about, where one person went for the Tomato Man route, which involves you placing the desert early and getting Norm Peaks to have a max salamander element, and then you can go get Mambo, I think his name is, or Mumbo or whatever, instead of Guri. He allows you to like do burn to your attacks if you're synchroned with him. But onto the final boss. She's not overly terrible. It's a pretty. Oh, go ahead.
Just from the RNG aspect, if this boss is generous, you can take her out very quickly with some counter strikes. If placement and what she's doing is good. That's not always the case, but as we can see, those counter strikes dish out huge damage and make really short work of this boss. So it's one of the bosses that's really, really viable for counter strike as a strategy.
Yeah, and one way I've heard describe of how to kind of position yourself correctly for the for counter striking is kind of place yourself with her feet. You want to place your characters match your feet with her feet, and then you'll be on the same plane, because that's the big problem, and time. And so timing ends when we actually on the final hit for the Mana Goddess.
Yeah, so just to wrap up the story on this real quick, the Mana Goddess essentially has a dark path or aspect to her, and it has to be defeated before the mana tree can be healed and the world can resume on with its ways.
So there's one thing, if there's a thing in the credits that someone pointed out during the hotfix that it's not necessarily hilarious, but it's just a funny little mishap in the coding.
I can't wait to see this, because I didn't pay attention to it yesterday.
I said it too late / early, because by the time I said it, you were already past that screen, I think.
Yeah.
If you want to learn how to run this game, speedrun.com has guides for all three of the main storylines. I think I don't know, did the all storylines guide get posted up, or?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there's a guide for all those. The all event one, I don't think actually has a guide. It's kind of, that one takes a little longer to route, because it's 8 hours as opposed to 2 to 3. I know Jay here did edits, some big edits on the Jumi storyline, and the Dragon one's a really nice storyline for people to learn how to play. That's what I started out playing as, and I mean my time is exceptionally fraudulent, but I started out speedrunning, learning the Dragon storyline, and the guide on there is really easy. It's very paint by numbers sort of aspect, and if you want to run the game, we also have a Discord that there's been a resurgence in people running the Dragon percent, and I've had questions, and other people have had questions that people have answered relatively quickly, because there's a good chunk of people that have access to Discord, with it being on phones and everything, that it's basically a small little Facebook group.
Yeah, the Discord's definitely been growing lately and been pretty active, which has been really nice. There's a lot more people picking up the Dragon Run. There's a little bit of work being done on a bingo board, just because there's so many things in this game that unless you have a specific incentive to go do them, you will never see even speedrunning all of the different categories.
So I think in the next fade out or the next fade in, there's a guy, you see him, he was kind of walking into a wall. Yeah, he's walking into a wall right there, and then he'll fade back in, and then he's just floating in the air.
Oh, that's so funny.
I think PX Micaiah pointed that out.
That seems fine. He's just hanging out.
There's some, downfall of typical, coding things. I mean, it's a PlayStation 1 game. One fun fact is, we don't generally, if you do generally when you do a PS1 game on a PS2, you run the PS2 because it has a faster load time, because you can adjust the disk speed. Now with this game, we don't do that, because the FMVs end up playing faster, and it gets a little wonky. I don't know, it's the only game I've ever seen do that.
The coding for FMV stuff in this game is there's something different about it in general. When running on emulation, even official emulation on say the PSP or the PS Vita, the little animations that play when you beat the Mana Goddess or one of the bosses that ends a storyline will just chug to a crawl for a couple seconds. It's some really gross and palpable lag.
But yeah, that was a great run. It looked like you PB'd by 43 seconds, I think.
Yeah, I think being able to focus on the game and having you guys commentate really helped.
Yeah, and like a 1:38 is a fantastic time because that's a lot of people, like a lot of the really good runs usually vary between like 1:30, like the really good ones are like 1:32 obviously, but like anywhere sub 1:40 is fantastic because this game can just give you some of the jankiest RNG in the world.
Yeah, there was some really nice drop and boss AI RNG on this run.
Yeah, specifically that Brave Blade drop was that was such a good time save.
Yeah, you called it, that I would get it. Sweet.
Yeah, I called it on the first one. I did not call it on the second one, but
yeah, we're in high spirits to say we can wrap up.
Okay, yeah, sorry.
Fun.
Yeah, that was.
Appreciate all the support and donations. Everyone watching.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on to commentate. I'm really looking forward to the rest of this marathon and seeing some more donations coming in. And definitely, like we mentioned before, come hang out with us on the Discord. We'd love to see some more folks interested in this game.
Cheers, everyone.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the rest of the marathon.
Thank you very much, Ellervated, for that Legend of Mana run, starting off the marathon, you guys, with some hype. I'm gonna read a couple more donations real quick that came in towards the end of that run. We had a $10 donation from Greffery. A link to the past file name. Gref is a baddie. Unfortunately, that got voted out by Ariar PS, who donated $15 to name Greffery's file name Moldorm, please. So, coming up next is Legend of Zelda, a link to the past NMG race between